Hello. I'm
Hello, welcome.
sorry.
I'm M.A. Powers. This is Raw and Real, number 15. Um, I'm in a different spot because my internet connection has been kind of terrible lately. So hopefully this will work out all right and we won't get as much echo, but it's just crossing the fingers because you never know.
Yes, and I'm JL Powers, coming to you live from California. All right, so this week we are going to talk a little bit about the new imprint of my publishing company, Catalyst Press, that you're going to kind of be in charge of a little bit. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think, coming from the science background, I am very interested in some science type topics, and I would like to have an emphasis on that. But I'm also very interested in fiction that comes from a scientific perspective, and not just science fiction, but maybe fiction based on scientists or scientific endeavor or so forth. And also if there's anything that is written very interestingly, because again, this is more for a mass market. Anything that is hardcore science is fine, so long as it would be of broad interest and written in a way that people would find interesting. I am not interested in science writing per se, because that is targeted to a very specific audience and not the audience I'm going for. I'm, a broad audience of anybody who would pick it up, and I think one of the things I am interested in is the idea of fiction within the pursuit of science too. And what I mean by that is you cannot, at least in the field of science that I was in, which was hardcore cell biology with an emphasis on cancer biology, but you can't be a particularly good scientist if you don't have the ability to use your imagination, right? Because you get a result and then you have to imagine what that result might mean, and then imagine experiments that you can do to test that result. And so I'm very interested in that idea of fiction. You're building up a fiction that you can test in a scientific endeavor, but I also believe, out there fiction in a way that's captivating and exciting, and that's what that's what I'm interested in.
Cool. And so you're going to start trying to acquire manuscripts now. Yes. With the first title possibly launching in a year or a year and a half, depending on
how long that's right. That's right. So if you're out there and you're interested in science or know people who are writing within this kind of overarching umbrella of fiction within the science world, you can always give us give your contact information and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, it's going to be fun. We're trying to actually launch a couple of different endeavors all at the same time, in addition to continuing to write.
Yes.
And that imprint, we're talking about, getting some t-shirts going that are particularly book related, right, etc. So we're kind of branching out in ways that feel both scary and fun at the same time.
Right. And my other pet idea, and I know we're seeing how that idea, and I think our pet idea that would come to fruition is the idea of society and perfection and being average. It looks like I'm getting paged. Yes, Owen.
Okay, so it's my turn to talk for a while. Matt was talking about this idea of being average and celebrating the average, and I think, yeah, we've both been discussing this. Growing up, I certainly felt a little bit like I was on a pedestal by the people around me. Not that I deserved to be on a pedestal or should have been on a pedestal, or that was in any way good for me, but because growing up in a family that I don't know if we prided ourselves or put ourselves forward as, or if it just happened by the community that was around us, put us kind of forward as role models of good Christian teens and then good Christian homeschooled teens. And so there was this intense pressure around living up to this ideal that made certainly me feel like I had to be way more than average. That being average was not good enough. That just being a good person and living a good life and having a family, that, you know, no, you had to do extraordinary things. You had to change the world. And so I'm just, because you were gone talking to your kids, I was just talking to the audience of people out there.
Great.
About how that pressure that we felt about being more than being extraordinary growing up, and that as adults we've realized that isn't the kind of pressure that we want to put on our kids or on ourselves anymore.
Yeah, and I think well, I think it's not just within the realm. You know, the more that I'm hearing that drive for perfection and perfectionism is becoming systemic within our culture, and it's actually really funny in a way, because it's so weird the time we're living in. But you know, we've been taught all our lives that we can do anything and be anybody else wrong, and it just makes you feel like a failure when you aren't living up to these wildly crazy expectations, because you're not going to be Michael Jordan. We're all, just by definition, most of our lives and who we are average. Just right. Because that's what the average is most of us, and we live there, and yet we feel like failures. Social media make us feel like we have to have it all together and be perfect all the time, because the neighbor next to us looks like their life is perfect, which isn't true. And then also we have this funny idea, if we just a little bit harder and we're just a little bit better, then we would be awesome, right? Mm-hmm. And yet our definition of awesome is not an average everyday life. Our definition of awesome is, again, being Albert Einstein, or being Leonardo da Vinci, or being Anderson Cooper, or some high profile person. That's our idea. And so how can we not be failures in this society, and how can we not be depressed about our lives? And so my passion is to say, no, let's stop that. Let's celebrate the average. Let's celebrate the fact that that we don't have to live under this crushing burden of failure, because we aren't everything we think we should be, because those expectations are completely and are unrealistic, because we aren't. We're not going to be. Most of us are. There might be parts of our lives that are above average, but most of our lives are going to be within average and acceptable, and something that we should give people credit for.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a total wreck.
Speaking of being average, is there a beeping going on in the background?
There is. So speaking of average, my average 9-year-old just made wild blueberry tarts on her own, but they're outside playing. So we see, there they are.
Nice.
They're done. So anyways, what do you think of that idea?
The celebrating the average? Yes.
Yep.
I think I want to take pressure off of myself. Yep. I think I've lived too much of my life feeling the need to, work harder, to prove more, to be better, to,
Right. I think I had one thing. I mean, we all have this in our lives, and we should celebrate those things that we really struggled with. And it was in my face growing up, right? Because I couldn't read until I was much older, and I still can't spell. And so that's something that's been in my face. has been a constant thing in my life that I've had to struggle with and realize that I'm never going to be good at. Well, I mean, reading is one thing. I can read and I'm good at that. But spelling, I've gotten way better than I was, but it's never going to be something that is intuitive or natural to me. And there's parts of writing that probably will never be intuitive and natural to me. And you can look at it that as a burden, but you can also look at it as it has allowed me to not be perfect in everything, right? And we all have those. We all have those areas of struggle in our life. And instead of trying to sweep them under the carpet, we should pull those out and celebrate them in this day and age, because those are the things that allow us to be human and allow us to not live under that anvil of expectation that if only I spent 1,200 hours or whatever it is, 3,900 hours or whatever is, then I would be perfect at this, right? Because we don't have that time and it's not worth it anyways. Even if that was true, which it isn't true. There's just things that aren't true about that instead of hiding those under.
That aren't possible for all of us to do.
Nope.
I can.
And that's a great thing.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
Yeah. And I think too, even choosing to focus on a few things rather than a bunch of things might not mean that you excel in the few things, but you know, at least you're focused on it and, you know, are really, really doing a good job at being a good mom or, you know, writing. So much out of our control.
Right. And I think I come from it more and more now that like we should celebrate not being a sucky mom or not being a sucky dad, not celebrate being a great dad or a great mom just because
what do you mean
like
by
that's
that?
a wildly weird definition. That's like saying you are a beautiful person. You know, that doesn't mean anything. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't even agree on what beauty means. You as a person are beautiful, or you as a person are ugly. We can't agree on what that means. And so I think in some ways, focusing on the fact that we're not just terrible, we can all pretty much agree what that means. Then that can take a burden off of our lives, right? I don't know. That's some of my thoughts, and because we all want to be smarter, healthier, richer, but it never stops. Even those who are smarter, healthier, and richer wish that they had that other thing that they don't have, and so it's a
never ending.
It's a ball and chain, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's never ending, no matter what you achieve.
Right. And so, and it's not even making us, the point isn't to make ourselves feel like we're the best people in the world. It's to get to a place where we can celebrate our friends and celebrate ourselves in all of our average glory.
And maybe just be happy rather than always seeking for something that maybe is unattainable to begin.
Or at least content.
Right. And I mean, I don't think like we've talked about this, and I don't think what you mean by that is settling or not trying to be a better person or to have life be better, but it's rather, you know, just sort of recognizing limitations and being happy with something that's good enough, and being
right. Yeah, I think part of our problem is to define is none of us do a very good job of actually defining what success is, and so it's sort of like when you tell your kid, you know, and they want to like decorate their room, but they're only 6 years old, you don't just, you know, give them at 10 gallons of paint and a paintbrush and say, go for it, walk away, because that is just a totally unreal expectation. And so in our lives too, we've been told all our lives we can be anything we want to be, which isn't necessarily true. And so it's to decide what is success for us as individuals, and realize that maybe being not a terrible, horrible person is success, right? Or, I mean, as part of it. And I'm thinking this through as we're talking, and I think that I think this will come out as we write about this and our own crazy experiences with way high expectations, like you were saying, and what does that mean when that comes crumbling down around you?
I think our definitions of success are a little bit like people's definitions of being rich.
Right.
Really rich people don't think they're rich.
That's right. That is right.
They're like, no, there's always somebody richer.
Right.
Or that your expenses get so much higher that you don't feel wealthy or whatever. And so I think we tend to do that with success too.
Right.
Whatever.
Well, yeah, and I guess
I've had that same experience too when, if you're like trying to become fit or losing weight,
right.
It's not enough to, lose, 5 pounds. No, you want to go even more, or to become fit. It's not enough just to run 3 miles. You want to run a marathon. Not that there's anything wrong with running a marathon, but our definitions of how these things go, the outside standard for it is oftentimes not the same thing as what we are pushing ourselves towards. Maybe the outside standard is high. Like people will say, you should run a marathon, or.
Right. I guess it's more having high expectations for yourself is not necessarily an issue, but you need to be able to have the freedom to not have high expectations about yourself in every area or every aspect of your life. You need a what?
A map.
A map? A map of what?
For my house.
Okay, later. You can have a map for your house later.
But my map is
I thought he was saying he needed a nap.
Yeah, that's not ever going to happen with that one.
All right. Well, maybe we better end this week.
Yep.
So thank you guys for coming to see Raw and Real number 15.
And remember what our we can't all be winners, but we can all be losers.
That's right. That is what Grandma said. You can visit us at www.powerssquared.com. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.